This week on The Record, a Senate shakeup. St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell shocks Democratic Party insiders and jumps into the primary race to run for the U.S. Senate. How Senator Josh Hawley and Democratic candidate Lucas Kunce are responding. We go one-on-one with Wesley Bell. Plus, could police seize AR-15s from the streets of St. Louis? Or would that amount to the return of stop and frisk? Alderwoman Cara Spencer is on the record to explain her plan. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. If Lucas Kunce thought he was the only Democrat who wanted a chance to run for Josh Hawley's job, well, he's far from alone. This week he gained a heavyweight contender in the Democratic primary. We sat down one-on-one with St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell, who says he can bring the lessons he learned on the divided, fractious streets of Ferguson into the world's most deliberative body. You see the dysfunction in D.C. You want to trade this job in your backyard for committee hearings about tariffs and foreign policy and judgeships and all the gridlock there?
You know, I saw the dysfunction in Ferguson as well. And when I was in a place of chaos, I helped calm tensions and de-escalate tensions. And Mr. Hawley, when he was faced with chaos, he worked to inflame the tensions. And I think we need more of that in Washington. I think many Missourians believe exactly what you just said, that they're not being represented by politicians in Washington. They believe that their voice is not being heard. And what we intend to do is take this message across the state of Missouri, just like we did in the St. Louis County race when we took on a 7-year incumbent who no one thought we could win. We took our message all across this county. We're going to do that exact same approach in this state so that we can continue to work together to bring real change, to bring real solutions, to help regular Missourians.
The Democrat establishment, you called them in your launch video. Is that a recognition that you have to kind of run against the party a little bit to win a general election?
Well, you know, when I ran for St. Louis County Prosecutor, clearly I had to run against the Democratic political establishment, and we're not afraid of tough fights. But you know, since then we focused on community engagement, outreach, because I think it's important that residents and citizens, they don't just know what you're doing, but why you're doing it. So I made a point to show up at town halls, show up at meetings, host our own town halls so that people can see me, that I'm transparent and they know what we're trying to do. And we're not seeing that in Washington. And I think that that's something that's experience that I can bring, of working together to bring real solutions. And that's what I intend to do. And we're certainly not getting that from Senator Hawley. I
understand it's convenient to focus your sights on Senator Hawley or to train your rhetoric at him. But aren't you overlooking somebody?
It's not. I'm not overlooking anyone. We're going to get out and we're going to take our message across this state. I think that I bring
a primary to run.
Absolutely. We're going to take our message across this state. I'm not going to speak for any other Democrat candidates. They can make their case. I'm going to make mine. And I bring experience as an elected official in Ferguson during some tough times, as well as St. Louis County. But most importantly, and I'm going to keep bringing this up, I bring experience of bringing people together to work. And we have 55 police departments in St. Louis County, 80 municipalities. We created a Chiefs Advisory Committee so we can sit down, work together on these issues, and I think that's the kind of approach we need in D.C.
And yet the mayor of Ferguson is backing your opponent, Lucas Kunce.
I talked to Mayor Jones. She had given that endorsement prior to me getting in the race. She's already told me that she has pulled that endorsement and is supporting me 100%.
You're breaking news right now. The mayor of Ferguson has flipped on this race?
Yes.
Do you expect to be able to win over others who have already endorsed Lucas Kunce?
Stay tuned. We've already had several who have already flipped, and we'll be announcing those shortly.
The AFL-CIO is a big friend of the Democratic Party, and I think the working class in general, they've endorsed Lucas Kunce early. They wanted to help him pave some inroads when it comes to fundraising.
And I have good relationships with them. I always have. And obviously they did that before I was in the race as well. And we're going to have those conversations. We're going to have those conversations also, which we've already started having those conversations. But the bottom line is endorsements don't win elections. Voters do. And the message and working together, and that's what voters want to see, and that's what we're going to do.
One senator he'll have no problem picking a fight with, that's Josh Hawley. What does Josh Hawley think about Wesley Bell's bid for the Senate?
I think there's going to be a lot of people in this primary. I bet this is far from over, and probably even more saliently, Mark, there's going to be a whole lot of money. I mean, all of the people who I have made very angry in my short time in the Senate, big pharma, big tech, the California types, George Soros, they are going to pour money, and they already are, and they're going to pour money into the state of Missouri and try to buy this seat, but it is not for sale, and I look forward to the contest.
Next on the record, St. Louis Alderwoman Cara Spencer joins us to talk about the proliferation of guns in the city of St. Louis, her Twitter beef with Mayor Tashara Jones' dad, and why you could have to pay more for water in the city. We're back in a moment.
I'm Weather First meteorologist Tracy Hinson, and you're probably used to seeing me here every weekend with your latest forecast. But ever wonder what I do when the cameras are off? I might just be headed to a school or youth group in your area. I show kids at all grade levels the power of science. Look, we made a cloud. We talk safety and demystify the most terrifying of weather phenomenons. Getting students excited about science, technology, engineering, and math is incredibly rewarding. But the best part of all is knowing that the next 5 on your side meteorologists might just be in one of our classrooms, and I can't wait to meet them.
Hey, St. Louis. It's time to step up and join the mission to end breast cancer. The 2023 Komen Greater St. Louis More Than Pink Walk is set for Saturday, June 10th in Tower Grove Park. Join 5 on your side in celebrating 25 years of impact right here in your community. You can walk or team up with family and friends. Log on to komen.org/St. Louis Walk to register today. Get the content that matters to you on your time. Breaking news as it happens. Weather alerts when you need them. On air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter how you watch, 5 on your side, focused on you.
Joining us now is Alderwoman Cara Spencer on the record. Good to have you with us. This issue of gun proliferation and people just openly carrying in the streets of St. Louis, the videos are new. Is the issue new?
Well, I would say this is an issue that has been growing, and so it's certainly not new, but where we are right now is certainly alarming, and it's the worst I've ever seen it.
The public awareness is certainly there now, and people do have concerns. Why do you think it's taken so long for the city of St. Louis to come up with this idea that you propose to, can I say, seize the guns of people that are carrying them if they don't have a permit?
I would say restrict the open carrying of firearms. So if we take a step back, the city of St. Louis had banned the open carrying of firearms going back to about 1970. We had a local ordinance in place. In 2014, with the state of Missouri put in place what's become known as the preemption law, which preempts cities from taking most actions related to guns. Our local ordinance didn't conform to that state law and so became invalidated.
Right, political infighting. Red state, blue city. There's been some back and forth over what the limits of the local jurisdictions are.
Well, the state preempted those existing laws. The same thing happened in Kansas City. They had a local ordinance that was thrown out because of the state law. At that time, Kansas City took the path that was opened by the state law. So if we look at the state law that passed, it restricts the majority of actions that cities can take related to guns, except for cities who do choose to restrict the open carry of firearms. They can do so except for people that have a concealed carry permit.
The concealed carry permit
Correct.
is the loophole.
It's
so
a loophole. You can also call it, threading the needle. It's kind of conforming to the state law. So
your options are a police officer can write someone a ticket, essentially?
Well, and we're getting some legal opinions, but you can write a ticket. There can be the threat of jail time. It's my understanding that you can safe harbor that gun at that time.
That sounds like political spin for seize.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, what you would do is you would consider it, evidence of the crime of open carrying a firearm, and then you would take that and
hold it as evidence.
Hold it as evidence until that is resolved in a court.
But you've run into some pushback from members of your own party on this.
Well, I mean,
would you call it pushback?
Well, we're no longer party politicians in the city of St. Louis. Now
Do you consider yourself a Democrat?
I do consider myself a Democrat, but let's be honest, we do run on a partyless ticket right now.
Semantics aside, or partisan labels aside, you've run into some pushback from other members of the board, or would you call it pushback, or just
pushback,
confusion about where to go?
I think there's a lot of confusion. I mean, the idea that we've been preempted by the state of Missouri has been baked into our collective conscious. And so, the question is why haven't we done anything? Kansas City, like I said, back in 2014, when the state passed the state law, they passed a local ordinance that conforms to the state law.
But the president of the board, Megan Green, says they're not really enforcing it. They're not really using it. They've got it on the books, but they don't really do anything with it.
And the president's right. They don't really have to enforce it because the open carrying of firearms was illegal in Kansas City. When that state law took place, they immediately followed up with a local ban, and so the open carrying of firearms never became legal. It never became commonplace. Now,
you think people there got the message, and if you do this, you're going to get in trouble?
Well, it was never legalized there. It was never, and so it didn't become commonplace. Now, on the other side of the state here in St. Louis, we didn't do that. So the open carrying of firearms became legal. At that time, our local ordinance became invalidated. And over the last 8 to 9 years, the proliferation of guns has really exploded. And as especially young people, teenagers, children, learn that police officers can do nothing about an AR-15 in your hands, it has really become part of gun carrying culture in the city of St. Louis, and it's a very volatile and a very dangerous situation we're in right now.
The word culture might be the most overused word in all political rhetoric these days, but I do think there is something about the visual signals that you send to people, and they become habits, they become those messages, and right now it sounds like you're saying that is catching on.
It has taken hold.
We'll get to the legal side and the lawyering of all this in a minute, but on the actual enforcement, do you worry at all that ordering police to show up and sort of question people about the gun they're carrying, if they have a permit or not, that might put them in danger? Or you think, no, they're up for the task, they can handle it?
I mean, right now, these AR-15s, they go right through bulletproof vests. I mean, they are extremely dangerous to have on our streets. Doing nothing, in my opinion, is extremely dangerous, and it's frankly not an option as far as I'm concerned. Doing nothing and letting kids who, frankly speaking, their frontal lobes, their emotional development they're not fully developed at this point. This is a very, very volatile situation for our police officers, for our general public, and for those kids carrying weapons. So I fail to see how letting this continue to get worse and worse is helping anyone. And I have spoken to a large swath of police officers all through ranks, and they are overwhelmingly in support of not only my bill, but restricting the open carrying of firearms. And I'll also say the pushback I'm getting from folks, those same folks, generally speaking, are interested in the state taking action on guns. And so to me, this appears to be politically motivated, if I may.
I don't know how many times I've heard since covering St. Louis politics, people point the finger at Jeff City and say, they won't let us do anything, they won't let us do anything. At some point, it becomes a convenient excuse.
Well, they will let us do this one thing. This bill that I've proposed conforms exactly and precisely to state law, and it mirrors a similar ordinance in place in Kansas City. And you're right, they don't have to enforce it there because, again, it has never become commonplace, and you do not see children walking down the streets of Kansas City with AR-15s.
On the lawyer side, you mentioned that you have lawyers looking at this proposal because there are questions about whether you can do it or not. I think some people rightly consider these issues and say, well, if we make a victim out of somebody, if we violate their Second Amendment rights, or if the state gets involved, then we've created someone who the courts can say this person has been injured, and now the city is subject to some liability there. Is that a concern of yours at all?
The city
or do you
gets,
say, you know what?
You know what? The city gets sued all the time. We're under, and that's what we have lawyers for.
No one wants to get sued. losing a lawsuit is even worse.
Correct. I'll say that. But the situation where we are right now, where businesses are leaving downtown, you have visitors who are showing up from out of town for games and for just visiting St. Louis, and they see these semi-automatic weapons walking down the streets. This cannot continue. This is costing our city money every single day, and it's costing lives.
Is your position that you'd rather do something and lose a lawsuit
Look,
rather
I think
than do nothing, or that you think you're on solid legal footing?
I think I'm on solid legal footing, and both are true at the same time. I've spoken with our city attorney, and we both feel we feel confident moving forward with this. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if there's always a room for legal challenge, but I think the failure to do anything is putting us at greater risk than doing something that has worked in Kansas City and that is clearly passing at least legal muster as far as the lawyers I'm speaking to are concerned.
Our viewers may know you ran for mayor last cycle. In this last few weeks, since you've raised this idea of going after the open carry, the mayor's father has been sniping at you. You've returned fire a bit on Twitter.
Well, the mayor's father's been sniping at me since 2020.
Setting the personal feuds aside for a moment, and I think the Post-Dispatch wrote at great length, and people can go to your Twitter feed or his and see all the back and forth and the exchange there. We won't get into the minutia, but he raises the suggestion that if this bill of yours becomes an ordinance, becomes part of city practice, that it could subject people of color to these negative interactions with police more often than others. Fair?
It could. I mean, that is a point. What he is suggesting is that this is like stop and frisk, which is something that is an abhorrent practice, which I would oppose vehemently. But this is not that. Stop and frisk is when you're making an assumption based on the way someone looks, and
this is more behavior based.
This is entirely and exclusively behavior based. There will be no interactions as a result of this unless a person is visibly and obviously carrying a firearm, in which case, it's my contention, and I think it's the contention of most St. Louisans, that we should intervene, and that the open carrying of firearms by children is it's a volatile, dangerous, and unacceptable practice.
Right behind violence and public safety, perhaps one of the biggest priorities of any public official would be that of poverty and wealth. And right now, a lot of people are looking at their water bill saying, wait a minute, you're going to raise our water bills in St. Louis? Is that really necessary right now? Is there anything more regressive than telling people in poverty, you got to pay more for the very thing you need to stay alive?
Water is so vital to our very existence. Believe it or not, our water is some of the least expensive water in the nation. And we have some of the best tasting water, the best produced water.
So let's charge them more for it.
But the reality is our water department is an enterprise fund. It's a separate entity. It's a public utility, and it does cost to produce. Right now, we were shocked. I was shocked, I should say, to learn last week that the water department for the last 2 years has been running at a $10-12 million a year deficit. I had no idea.
What's driving that?
The cost of producing water and the deferred maintenance on our water system.
Is it that fewer people are paying for their water bill because the city is losing population?
The city is losing population, and that does play into it, and that's something we should all be well aware of. But the reality is that the cost of producing water, continues to rise, and our rates have not done that. I think we have done a huge disservice by failing to, adhere to the auditor's, suggestion that we raise rates going back a couple years. Running at a deficit of digit millions for the last couple years is really, really an unfortunate position for us all to be in right now.
There are financial assistance programs available in some capacity or another, but can you vote for any flat use increase across the board that doesn't also include some consideration for people who might just not have that kind of room in their budget?
Oh gosh, you're speaking my language. I am on the board of an organization that represents low-income consumers in utility rate cases, and so for me that's a very, very important perspective. We're going to be having a hearing. We're having hearings as we speak to discuss this, and I will be strongly advocating for consideration of folks that have a hard time paying for water. Because not only can you not live without it, you cannot have an occupancy permit without water in your home. So if you lose access to water, you lose access to your home, and that's a really very scary position.
All right, a lot of important issues before the city of St. Louis, and we'll have time to get into those. Stay tuned, she's saying. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, anytime.
Get the content that matters to you on your time. breaking news as it happens,
We are following breaking news at this hour.
weather alerts when you need them, live streams and newscasts on your schedule, on air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter where you go or how you watch, 5 on your side, focused on you.
What's the forecast in Florida?
What's it like in Belleville?
No matter where you are.
What's the forecast in St. Peter's?
Or how you get your weather.
We know you want the forecast for your backyard.
And you want it now.
Right here and right now.
The 5 on your side, Weather First team. Focused on you.
Most people think this is St. Louis, but we know better. It's our neighborhoods, our people, and that's our focus. Because no story is bigger than the one that affects you. 5 on your side, focused on you.
Missouri hasn't elected a Democrat to the U.S. Senate since Claire McCaskill won in 2012, and after that, prospects got even worse. Donald Trump winning the state by 18 points in 2016, then a little bit less by 15 points in 2020, but it's still Missouri very much a red state as of late. Wesley Bell is hoping to change that. We asked him what kind of a senator he'd make and whether he's running against the Democratic Party in our second part of the interview on the record. Would you have voted for the infrastructure bill?
Absolutely, I would have.
The CHIPS Act?
Listen, absolutely. What we need to do is we have to focus on the issues that impact everyday Missourians and Americans, for that matter. Not the culture wars, but actual issues that impact voters, and that is in jobs, public safety. These are important issues that we have to address, but it's going to take bipartisan efforts, and we need people who are willing and committed to doing that.
You mentioned the culture wars. Just recently, Congresswoman Cori Bush tweeted that the Democratic Party needs to push back against this anti-woke campaign. She said that's because the campaign is rooted in anti-blackness. Do you agree?
Mark, I think that what this is, you're making this about every candidate except the one that I'm willing to talk about. And that's our campaign.
We want to get to know who you are and how you think about these issues. You just said the culture war issues.
And I get that. And I'll say this. One thing that I know is that folks do know who I am. They know I'm someone that when there's a tough fight, I'm not going to shy away and make the political decision or the political calculation. I'm going to get involved. In Ferguson, that was not, when I ran for city council 9 months after Ferguson became Ferguson, that was not looked at as a job that would lead to other jobs. That was, we know we don't have to relive, we have to go back and to that, but working together, we were able to bring court reform that no one thought we could do. We were able to bring community policing, which no one thought that we could do. And then in the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, we've been able to expand diversion programs while also aggressively prosecuting crimes, and that's from working together. And so I'm not here to talk about other Democratic candidates. What I'm here to talk about is our message, and we're going to take this message to Missourians all across the state.
I asked that because your launch video itself rooted itself in Ferguson. Your answer there just reiterated that. Obviously, there was racial division there, and the state of Missouri has never once elected a statewide person of color.
I don't know if it was so much as racial division, because what I saw were people of all backgrounds saying that we want change, and what it required was getting people together to work together, law enforcement, protesters, and activists. That's how we were able to turn that tide, and that's what we need more of in D.C.
So you still see a path forward on those conversations, because there is a certain segment of the American political body that is hesitant to go there.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and what I would like to mention is that when I was faced with chaos, I worked to calm tensions between police and protesters. When Josh Hawley was faced with chaos, he chose to inflame them. And I think if you want to get a measure of how I will be as a U.S. Senator, I think just look at my record. The same way with St. Louis County, as St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney. We campaigned all over this county, West County, South County, North County, because we wanted to take our message to everyone. We were not going to concede any places that maybe we're traditionally conservative, and we won big.
In the history of Missouri, voters have not once elected a black person to a statewide office. You'd be the first.
Yeah.
Why will this time be different?
I think Missourians are worried about issues that impact them being able to make ends meet and put food on the table and be safe. And I think Missourians don't care what you look like as long as they know that you're going to work for them. And folks around here know that when I become U.S. Senator, that I'm going to work for them. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be a voice for them in D.C. And we need more of that commitment to working together. I've shown it, I've done it, Missourians want it, they deserve it, and that's what they're going to get.
A couple quick questions about the Senate, and we'll have time to litigate all this throughout the primary and beyond.
Of course.
Should that occur. On the filibuster, keep it, get rid of it?
See, I'm fully in favor of filibuster reform. I think too many people like Mitch McConnell, for example, hide behind the filibuster, and we can't get meaningful legislation even when we have a majority of folks who want it. And so I think those are conversations we absolutely have to have and that I would support.
Should D.C. be a state?
Oh, I think that I think that's something that we can talk about because we have, and I know Carl Racine, the former Attorney General, I've actually talked to him about this conversation before. You have people that are not having the full representation that others of us enjoy in other jurisdictions, and I think that's something we should strongly consider.
Should the Supreme Court grow?
That's a good question. I think that many people feel that the selections weren't always fair and that they were partisan. And again, I think that's something, I know that there's been some studies being done on that.
You're open to it?
And I'm open to the conversation, absolutely.
What specific gun safety reforms can you vote for today?
And I'll say this, as a gun owner myself, I believe in common sense gun safety laws.
Such as?
Such as what a majority of Americans agree with red flag laws, with background checks.
At the federal level?
At the federal level, I think these are things that we need to address in Washington, D.C. and Jefferson City. These are laws that literally can save the lives of not only just regular citizens, but our children. We have had more mass shootings than days in 2023.
But you just said two things that Roy Blunt already voted for, and they're already federal law. They expanded background checks, they incentivized red flag laws, but until and unless Missouri does something on red flag laws, they don't exist here. So what more could you do that isn't already federal law?
I think we need to go further with all of these things. Right now, if someone is a domestic violence abuser, we cannot stop them from owning a gun. There's so many more things that we can do. We have not scratched the surface on what we can do. And I want to be clear, we're just talking common sense gun laws. That's all we're talking about.
70–80% of the country, even in a recent Fox News poll, supported it. So
87% of people support expanding background checks. Over 80% support red flag laws. Absolutely.
Sitting or past member, former member, favorite U.S. Senator?
That's tough because when I won St. Louis County Prosecutor, Cory Booker called me, and Bernie Sanders called me, but during the campaign, the presidential campaign, I got to interview Amy Klobuchar. So that was cool, and I got a chance to talk to her. And so you are not going to get me in trouble with any of the senators that I know. So I'm going to say I have a deep respect for all of them.
He's already playing the game.
That's survival, man.
Lucas Kunce celebrated that endorsement from the AFL-CIO just one day before Wesley Bell got in the race. He hustled to get it and got it just in the nick of time. But he had even bigger news also this week. He and his wife Marilyn welcoming Harvey Alexander Kunce into the world 7 weeks early via emergency C-section at the Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. In other news from Jefferson City this week, Governor Mike Parson on Wednesday signed 2 bills that would impact transgender youth around health care and athletics. One of those bills restricts gender-affirming care for new patients younger than 18. However, that law will expire in 2027. The second requires athletes to compete on sports teams that match the sex listed on their birth certificate. Both of those laws go into effect August 28. And finally, a note about our program. We'll be preempted next week, but we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks at a new time, Thursday, 12:30, immediately following 5 on Your Side at noon. Until then, we're off the record.